everyone. Welcome. So today we have a little bit of a different session for our live Q&As with Nahal, since we're going to be launching the single breath program soon. Can everyone hear me okay, by the way? Just to double check. Okay, cool. Thank you.
All the way across the ocean.
Woohoo! Yes. That's how I like it. So yeah, today we're gonna do like a little info session on the single breath program. And it's the structure is actually hot from this morning's reflection. So no one else has seen it yet. But let's actually do our regular membership portal stuff. So let's get centered. So let's sit in a comfortable seated posture, or if you're standing, wherever you are, just pause for a moment. And put your feet flat on the ground, connect with the ground, hands on your knees or by your sides, and just breathe. Centering your sit bones, your heart, and your head all in one line with one another. And focus on your breath. And gently just scan from the crown of your head all the way to the tips of your toes. Of just like scan very quickly from the forehead, eyebrows, ears, and just notice any sensations in your body. Nose, lips, chin, head, shoulders, arms, fingers, chest, rib cage, hips, thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and toes. Just notice how you feel. And if there's any sensations, maybe you could just place your loving attention on it. That's all, just your attention. Gentle attention around any area that you feel sensations. So if it's your shoulder, you want to kind of like focus in a bubble area around the shoulders. Okay. And gently bring your attention back. Cool. All right. So if there are any questions, specific questions, we can wait for it till like a little bit after I show you these tables. I want to go through the entire structure of the single breath program and just show you how everything is going to like pan out over the next 12 weeks. So in this, let me see if I can make it bigger. There we go. So the single breath program, there's about 7 weekly activities that we're going to be doing. The first one is morning reflections, which is in the frequency of which it's going to be daily. The second, third, and fourth are basically the first, second, and third breath practices. And all of those are daily practices, and they're only like 1 minute long. And the fifth practice is the evening reflection practice. That's also happening daily. Yeah. So the first 5, the morning reflections, breath 1 practice, breath 2, breath 3, and evening reflection practices, these are all like daily practices. And then once a week, I will be teaching a lecture on a Monday. And then at the end of the week, on a Sunday, I'll be having like a debrief. So basically, the first lecture is going to be like just teaching you guys the meat of like the whole program, everything that you need to practice in the rest of the week. And then the debrief sessions are a time for you guys to actually share with me how you guys felt with each of the different practices that you were doing, whether it's like the morning reflection practices, insights that came to your mind, or during the breath practices, any sensations that you felt, or like experiences that you had, you wanted to ask questions about, or just share reflections. So it's a place where we can all kind of like synthesize our learnings and make sure that we're all kind of like going forward together. So the weekly timing of each of the practices is of the following. So the morning reflection practices are upon waking. So whenever that is for you, it's going to be upon waking. So if you usually wake up at 6, you need to be waking up at 5:40 to do this practice. So whatever time you wake up, it's just 20 minutes before this to do this practice. If you are a person who has spiritual practices, like you say prayers and meditations, I would like you to do it after that. So first you do your prayers and then you do the reflection practices after that. And the lecture will happen basically, if I were to do this like on a Monday schedule, it would look like this. So the morning reflections, you would wake up and do your morning reflections. And then afterwards, it would be then it's the lectures, which is like the fixed time between 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Depending on if you're attending the online session, this is the 7 to 8 p.m. Beijing time sessions on a Monday. This schedule that I wrote down is for our in-person sessions that we'll be having locally in Mandarin, actually. This is the Mandarin schedule. So the breath practice, the first one, the timing is your choice. You are welcome to choose when you want to do it. The only thing I ask, actually all of the breath practices throughout the day that I'm going to ask you to do, which are only 1 minute long, you can choose when to do it. But you do need to schedule it into your calendar, and it's not a random time that you do it. It's not like, oh, I feel like doing it now. No, it's like scheduled, that you actually put it in your schedule. You have an alarm, you have a notification that you're like, I need to pause, stop, drop, and pause and do the practice now. So even if you don't have calendars, you're about to have one because you're going to need to do this. Even if you don't have a calendar, it's fine. You can also set up alarms or reminders on your phone. Either way, there needs to be a notification of some kind, which you can choose as well, to do the breath practices. I will provide some suggestions below, but they need to be in your schedule, like throughout the day, and you get to choose when. So the debriefs are going to be on a Sunday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And for the online session, it's 7 p.m. Beijing time to 8 p.m. Beijing time. So this is also for the Mandarin speaking sessions. So in the evening reflections, I would like you to do before sleeping time. So the morning reflections practice is like literally right after you wake up. If you have spiritual practices like prayer and meditation, you do those first, and then you do the reflection practices. But you can kind of test it out with yourself to see like how you feel. But essentially, morning reflections is like very soon after you wake up. If you want to do it a little bit before, a little bit after, it's fine, but within an hour of a waking time, essentially. And the evening reflection practices basically before you wind down to sleep. So both the morning reflections and evening reflections you can do in bed. You don't have to be sitting all nice and perky and pretty. It's like you can do them whenever, however you want in that sense. So here are some suggestions of how to connect the single breath program to your schedule. So the morning reflections is like upon waking up, like I mentioned. The lectures, it's a fixed time that you have to attend live. The replays will be made available on the occasional times that you cannot make it. There are only 2 times that you get not to attend live because we really need to do the lectures. So throughout the 12 weeks, it's possible to miss it twice, not more than that. So it's really important to actually attend the lectures live. So the breath practice, here are some options of how to, like, where to incorporate it in your day. So the first could be like before breakfast. I want you to think of the activities that you can attach it to, that it will kind of be, it's already in your rhythm in your day, that you could connect it with it. One of the examples I wanted to write is like with your morning coffee. I did write that before breakfast, but maybe your breakfast is just a morning coffee and not anything else. So that's also something that you could do. And yeah, so option 1 is before breakfast. You can connect it with your meal, or before you go to work, something that's like regular and on a schedule. The third option is like upon arriving at work. So the breath practices can help you like focus, and in terms of meal times, it will help your digestion. Before you go to work, it'll just center your mind and your body and your soul. So it's like whichever you find actually in your day that is a little bit of a difficulty, actually putting the breath practice right before it will help you do that activity with more ease and just kind of calm you down. So if there's like, I would imagine that my idea of it is to kind of like really attach the breath practice to your daily habits. For instance, like if you were to arrive at work and you feel usually really frazzled, the first thing you do is to sit on your chair, is to do your breath practice in the morning, and then start your day. So your day is started with being centered. You don't go and then after that, you can go get your coffee at work or whatever you need to do, go print things, go start your meeting and whatever it is. But you have that center time where you sit down, you do that breath practice, and then you kind of center yourself, and then you go do all of your activities. So the second breath practice, ideally, I would like you to space these 3 breath practices throughout the day, not to jam them all within an hour. Because they're just one minute, this is something that we can do. And this is why it's so important for us to schedule it in our calendars, because I don't want this exact situation as I described to happen, that within an hour you do 3 of the breath practices. I want it to be spaced out. So part of the reason why the breath practice is actually, the frequency is done 3 times for only 1 minute. It's not really about the duration of how long you do your breath practices for. If you want to do it for longer than 1 minute, that's your prerogative. That's what you do. But for the single breath program is really a program to train you how to become aware of your breath. And one of the reasons why we actually have these certain times to attach it to our activities like breakfast, like work or whatever, it's to actually remind ourselves to always be aware of our breath. So it's about the awareness of breath, not really about how long we do the breath. It's really about, I want you to actually throughout the day, my goal is to get you to be 24 hours, like 24/7 is to be aware of your breath, regardless of what activity you do. But the single breath program is really there to teach you the habit of being aware of your breath. It's an awareness breath practice. And then once you're aware how long you do that breath practice and how long you want to stretch it for, and then the complexities that come with that, it will be established because you already have first the habit of being aware of your breath. Okay, so this is actually very different from other breath programs in this sense. This is a very unique program in this sense because other breath programs will teach you gymnastics of breath. I am trying to teach you frequency and awareness of breath. It's slight different, but big difference. This program will actually help to assist people to forever be aware of their breath. Whereas other programs, they don't really focus on the habit component. So sometimes you could learn a technique that's really amazing, but then they didn't really teach you how to build a habit. So the single breath program teaches you two things. It teaches you the breath techniques, but most importantly, it teaches you how to sustain it long term so that you never lose this breath practice. So this, by the end of the 12-week breath program, you will not forget your breath. That is certain. So there's no way of forgetting because of the frequency of times that we have to practice our breath. Okay. And so the second breath practice, I would like you to do like midday sometime. Like you could attach it to your lunch, after lunch, before a regular daily meeting or something like that, or any other. This is really your choice, but these are just some thoughts to kind of like jog your memory. So it's to kind of see your own schedule throughout the day and kind of be like, where can I add this breath practice that will be the most stable, that I will be guaranteed to do it? Not necessarily because I'm going to write a blog about actually breaking down the benefits of attaching your breath practice to each types of activity. So I'm gonna describe, like, if you wanted to do your breath practice before a meal, what would it do to your body? If it was after a meal, what would it do to your body? If you wanted to connect it with your exercise before, during, and after your exercise, how would that heal your body and stuff like that? So you might have a very specific desire to, like, you have digestion issues. So you're like, oh my God, if I connect my breath practices right before I eat, I like bring the blood circulation to my stomach and I really help to focus on that area because that's like a priority of mine, right? Because I know I have digestive issues. Or if you're like, I want to work out and I want to burn more fat, and if I focus on my breathing practices during my exercise, that's going to be something that's going to help me build awareness. So I'm going to write a blog to compare all of the benefits of which benefit is the actual benefit that you specifically want to derive, or you're like, this is more important for me right now. That's the one that you choose of where to stick it in your day. But the major thing that you need to remember is that the number one priority is for you to do it. So for instance, it will be very easy for me to do the breath practices right before I eat because I'm guaranteed I eat every day very regularly. My breakfasts are very regular. My lunches are not. So to combine my first breath practice with my breakfast is going to be a good idea. But let me say, I love to also swim, and doing the swimming practices. It would be so great to actually do the breath practice before I go on a swim. But then at the swimming pool, I'm not going to have my phone. And so one of the things that we actually do with each of the breath practices is measure ourselves before and after we do the breath practice, which we'll see in a bit. And being in a swimming pool, I'm not going to have my phone. So not necessarily combining this single breath program, scheduled breath practice in there. Sorry, that was a very complicated sentence. Let me say that one more time, more easily. Basically, connecting my breath practice to my swimming activity would not be helpful because I can't measure how I feel before and after my breath practice while I'm at the pool because I don't have my phone. So it's also something you need to think about. You need to have your phone or a computer, something close by to kind of jot down your progress of your breath practices. So just to wrap up, how to connect the single breath program to your schedule. The debriefs are, again, a fixed schedule, and the evening reflections before sleeping. Really, the major choice are like when you do the breath practices, which are actually the major component of it, but you have a lot of freedom of when to do it. The morning reflections, evening reflections, no choice, and the lectures are at a fixed time. So those are kind of like fixed in that sense. So now I want to go through like an example of a weekly schedule for you from Monday to Sunday. Okay. So Monday, for instance, we'll wake up at like 6 a.m. or whenever you wake up. You do a 20-minute practice of the morning reflection practice. For the first 3 weeks, I believe it is, I really just want you to perfect the fact that you are doing this practice because it takes time to build this habit. In week 3 of the program, I actually will provide you specific reflection questions that are on the themes of the 7 valleys and the yogic chakras. So the yogic chakra themes might start a little bit earlier, but the 7 valleys themes start on week 3 or 4, I believe. So the morning reflection practices, for the first couple weeks, it will just be for you to gain the habit of reflecting and for you to actually have several weeks to unburden yourselves if this is not a regular practice that you do. And once you've kind of unburdened yourself regularly, sometimes you need a little bit of a topic to kind of like specific topic to reflect on. And that's when, once your habits of reflection have already been stabilized, then reflection questions will be given to you. Okay, so moving on. So 8 a.m., let's say, for instance, if your work starts at 8 a.m., as soon as you get to work, you do the 5-minute breath practice. And the first thing you do, and the 5 minutes is broken down into this. The before, notice your breath practice. This is the first breath practice that we're learning in the program. So you do the before, notice your breath practice survey. This takes usually 2 minutes for people to write. And then you do the 1-minute breath practice. And then you reflect on, after you did the practice, you do the after breath practice survey. So basically, sandwich between each of your breath practices, right before you do it, you have to fill out a survey for 2 minutes, do the practice for 1 minute, and then also reflect on how it's changed your body. The reason why we do that is that, one, I'm constantly bringing attention to your body. So in this survey, I will ask you questions about, how do you feel in your body? How does your energy feel? How does your mind feel? How does your emotions feel? These are the 5 layers of health in integrative yoga therapy. So basically every day I'm getting you to reflect on, and then I ask you also, what are any other sensations that you experience? So every day, just like we did actually for this session, I asked you guys to scan your body from your head all the way to your toes. Every time you do the breath practice, I want you to do kind of like a check-in with yourself, a physical check-in, energetic check-in, a mental and emotional check-in, and to kind of just see like how you're feeling. Okay. Then I want you to do the breath practice. And then after the breath practice, afterwards, I want you to measure to see how that specific breath practice made you feel. So every time you have information for yourself that you have assessed how you feel, you've done the practice, and then you assess how you feel after the practice. So you have the kind of connection, so you can see before you did the breath practice, what was your body's condition? And then after your breath practice, what was your body's condition. And this practice you do every single time you do the breath practices. And when you have this habit of constantly measuring how you feel in the moment, how you feel afterwards, you get to be very, very clear how each of the breath practices have an effect on your body. And at the same time, you have more deeper awareness of how your body feels in general. You're like, oh my gosh, until I've done these practices, I didn't know that I always chronically have this shoulder pain on my left side. And that when I do the breath practice, I feel a little bit of relief. Oh, this is the second week. Oh, in the third week when I was doing this breath practice, actually, I don't have any more pain in my shoulder. So this is kind of like, I want you to, every time you do this, it's kind of like you're getting to know atoms of your body, like small things about your body. You're slowly, very incrementally getting to know your body in different ways. So coming back to the schedule. So Monday, we wake up, do the morning reflection practice at 8 a.m. We do the first breath practice. And then on Monday at 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. is the lecture for the Chinese single breath program. But for the online one, it will be at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay. The second time, for example, on this Monday, because we have the lecture, it's going to be a slightly different. We will do the breath practice after lunch. Okay. Because actually for this lecture, we actually do have, this is where I teach you the breath practice. So within the lesson itself, I actually ask you to practice it 3 times as well. So, okay. So this is after lunch. So in the morning, after lunch, and then, for example, this is a for example, and then after work, 5 minutes before you leave work. So if you leave work at 5 p.m., at 4:55 p.m. is when I want you to do the last breath practice. So for those who have families, this is a very good idea because it kind of centers you to clear out all the things that you need to remove from your work, all of your stress or anything. It kind of dumps it out, gives you a clean slate. And then so when you go home to your family, you're going home with a rejuvenated mindset. Like you're not taking on the stress of work to your home. So people who have families could think of like timing your breath practice at this particular time. And the schedule for each of them is the same. Each time they do the breath practice, before you do the survey beforehand, and you do the survey afterhand. So it's the notice your breath practice survey, and then the after notice your breath practice survey. So it's a little confusing. I really capitalize it so you can make sure that you know the difference between the surveys of which one you have to do before and which one you do after. And for the entire week, you only practice one breath technique. So you are very, very clear, and you've practiced this one breath technique multiple times throughout the week. So like you've practiced it 3 times on Monday, 3 times on Tuesday, 3 times on Wednesday, 3 times on Thursday, 3 times on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 3 times each. So you're really, by the end of the week, you know the notice your breath practice so well. So Tuesday schedule is basically without the lecture. It's the same thing. You wake up in the morning, you do the morning reflection practice. 8 a.m., you do your first breath practice. 11:25, if your lunch is at like 11:30, like 5 minutes before you go to lunch, you do the second breath practice. And then right before work at 4:55 p.m., you do your third breath practice. So the same schedule is very similar for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be the same if your work schedule is consistent. On Saturday, you might want to think about what time you wake up, and your morning reflection practices, your time, like what time your reflection practice is might switch up a little bit. And when you practice your second, third breath practices also might all be pushed back a little bit, depending on when you wake up and what your schedule is. And so it's totally fine if you're like, well, I have a meeting, I'm going to go hang out with my friends, or I have a art class on a Saturday. You can do it right before the art class or right after the art class. And you can test it out to see where to place it. This is kind of like an art, not a science in that sense, but being consistent is the scientific part of that. So I think I have shared everything I needed to share in terms of the structure of the single. Oh, and the Sunday one is also the one where we have the debrief for an hour from 4 to 5 p.m. This is the local Chinese schedule, and the online schedule will be from 7 to 8 p.m. on a Sunday. So yeah, does anyone have any questions regarding this, regarding any of the things? Did I just share so much information with you guys? Was it clear to kind of explain to you like what is going to be expected when you start the single breath program?
Yes, it's clear, very clear.
Very clear. Okay.
Very clear, and it's now the people, they know what to expect, what to have to do.
Yes.
Because you break down everything here.
For basically 12 weeks, this is going to be your schedule. So you will see that it's a big difference in your day, but it's micro changes because none of the activities actually take up a lot of time, but it will eventually get you into a rhythm where you will the program is going to get more and more complex. So even though I've structured it in this way, I kind of build the capacity of you guys slowly. So like throughout the duration afterwards, in the later weeks of the breath program, the duration of the breath practices start to increase a little bit. But basically the structure and even what I give you to do in the morning reflection practices and the evening reflection practices start to become a little bit more complex. But basically it's to slowly do this. And so this is what I'm hoping that the single breath program will do for you. Whilst you are in the single breath program, your habit that you're trying to build is breath. But the same structure, once you've learned it, because it's going to repeat itself every day, and you're going to be doing this every single day of the week. Notice that there's not a single day off. It's Monday to Sunday. And then the next week, there's another topic. So every day there is a practice. Very short practice, but there's always a practice. And so later on, once the program is done, any habit that you want to build on top of this, it will be the same structure, but instead of breath practices, you do whatever else. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to be better at memorizing quotes. What you would do in the 3 breath practices are you would put them there. So the structure of how to incrementally build a habit is taught to you. So my goal is to teach you how to build a habit about how to breathe. But then after this program, once you've taken it, you on your own will do your own, like, not breath memorization program, you could say, or exercising program. I could say, or learning how to do art program. Whatever it is, you will be able to have the skills to be able to learn and put your goal and your focus on any goal. So one of the reasons why I really wanted to make this program is because a lot of people have goals. Like, for instance, right now it's the beginning of the new year. Yesterday, I spoke to someone who literally drew a map, and they were like, hey, what are your goals this year? And I was like, and I told them like all the things that I wanted to do. And it's like, what else? And I was like, what did you do? And she's like, oh, I have like 8 things. And she wrote like a pie chart of like all of her goals and all of these things and of how she's going to achieve it and stuff like that. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I really hope at the end of the year, she doesn't go and say that, oh, I can't achieve all of these things. Because I think one of the things that we don't do enough in our lives is that when we have a goal, we don't know the process of what it takes to achieve it. So one of the main reasons that I want to create this single breath program is to actually teach you how to achieve anything, any of your goals, and teach you the ways to do that, in the sense that you break things down very small, atomically, incrementally, in order to start building yourself a habit, and then you slowly expand and you get very large. Just to share an example with you, one of my friends that I grew up with, he told me this thing where he would go to the gym and just walk on the treadmill. And I was like, what? I thought this was so stupid. And he only did it for 10 minutes. He's like, oh, I'm just trying to build a habit of going to the gym. And then he's like, and then I remember being like, that is so ridiculous. That is such a crazy idea. But actually what this does is like you build a habit to just go to the gym, to put on your shoes, to walk to the gym, and you start making it a habit of just going to the gym. And then slowly, once you're at the gym, you realize, oh, I actually can do a lot more here. But because it's already in your pattern of actions to go to the gym, that you can, once you've started the actions, you can kind of like build in complexity, like how to like go about it in that sense and to increase it. What people don't know is often that they need to start small in their habits. They start something like really big and they go all out, and then they can't keep it consistent because they don't have it like imprinted in their daily lives, in their schedules, to be able to like achieve something. So the breath program, my goal is to teach you breath. But the second, what do you call it? The side effect of this program will be that you will be able to structurally know how to build any habit that you want to do. So this is something like very unique in the sense that even if you weren't interested, and the reason why I chose breath in this program is because everyone breathes. And also everyone's emotions, minds, and thought patterns are related to their breath. So when you get your breath in order, everything else in your life kind of gets in order. So this is basically the foundation of any other goal that you want to achieve. If you want to achieve memorization, what will trip you up in your memorization is your breath. Suddenly you'll be like, oh my God, that was too hard. Or like, like you'll start getting nervous, and it's actually your breath that goes out of balance. So the breath is the foundation of why, a lot of reasons why we don't achieve any of our goals. So by teaching you how to breathe, that's the foundation. Anything else you want to build on top of that If you go all the way minutely to its core, you're going to reach to the breath. Breath is the simplest, last form. There's nothing beyond this. There's nothing beyond the breath that you need to work on. The breath is the first. And then everything else. Nutrition is related to breath. Sleep is related to breath. Memorization is related to breath. Exercise is related to breath. Breath is the core. Everything else is the complexity that's added on top of that. So the single breath program teaches you the absolute foundational thing. And it also happens to be that learning breath practices will significantly improve your health. So when you're healthier physically, then you also have more energy to go pursue your goals and whatever you want in your life. So it's kind of like all of it is like added on top of each other. So do we have any questions? Any other questions or clarifications, or you're like, no, that was too quick, or I didn't get this part. Where am I supposed to do this practice or that practice? Any questions? Go for it. Oh, you're muted.
After you unmute yourself.
Sorry. One is an age group, and also another is if they have any health condition can attend.
So age group, there is no limit. Everyone is able to learn a new habit, and everyone breathes. Again, no problem. Health condition, it's a very good thing. A good question to ask. The health conditions of the single breath program, I'm actually limiting it to professions. I recently have decided that I'm going to limit it to professions. So doctors, mothers, I wouldn't say it's a profession, but they take care of people, and teachers. 3 populations. This is for who it's for. So within these 3 populations, usually you find some similarities. One, that they're usually mentally stable. If either of them are not mentally stable, at least for the doctors or the teachers, they're not allowed to work, right? Mothers are unfortunate in that they have to work even if they have like a mental health condition, right? But usually their conditions are like depression or anxiety, which breath practices do help them. Because breath is this is something that people really don't know about breath. It's very dangerous. Breathing incorrectly can be very dangerous. So if you have a mental condition, it usually exacerbates that condition, depending on what it is, not always. But if you're schizophrenic, it will agitate you even further, okay? But then it also depends on the case, on the person and the type of condition that they have. So even some types of depressions are manic depressions where they suddenly go really high and suddenly go really low. And so even the breath practices that are given for those people are like very different in that sense. But basically mental sanity, at least for the single breath program, is necessary. If you're on medications and you're stable, cool. You are obligated to inform me what your condition is. And of course that will be confidential. But the reason why I need this information, I absolutely need this information, is to actually ensure your own safety. The single breath program is super easy breath programs. It's not very complex. But you still need to tell me. So majority will not have a problem. But this is still an obligation that you need to tell me. When we do level 2 of the single breath program, where things get a bit more complex, that is where we definitely have to monitor people like very closely to see like what is allowed and what is not. So in terms of health conditions, all health conditions are welcome except mental insanity. That is like definitely one. But other health conditions, like if you have high blood pressure, you may get dizzy. It's possible that you can get dizzy, but they're all very gentle practices. So even for people who have hypertension, it could still be okay. But again, I need to know what your condition is, and I will be monitoring you very closely. I'll be asking you questions of how you feel for this. So basically every lecture, when I teach you guys the new breath technique, the people who have hypertension will definitely need to let me know how they're doing, how they're like adapting the situation. Because usually what ends up happening is that people, when they start breathing practices, they think they need to do a lot to kind of show that they're doing it. So you end up, the breath practice itself is not complicated, but then you like suddenly take a very strong inhale, and that for anyone that would like be like jarring for the body. So it's also about how you do the practices that are also related to that. So usually with new learners of breath, people with hypertension, if they try too much or exert too much force, it will make their barometrics in their body like a little unstable. But if you take it as gentle as I teach it, there should be no problems. So for diabetes, it's excellent. No problem with that. They will not feel sick or anything like that. But again, it also has to do with the condition of your body. I took several years to be able to do the breath practices that I wanted to do. Like I needed to purify my body in terms of change my diet, not eat fried foods, like really eat an anti-inflammatory diet. So even though week 2 of the single breath program, I will actually provide you with some recommendations of what to eat throughout the program to assist you. But actually level 2 of the program is where I go really deep into the diet component, where I will actually recommend, because the breath practices are really is higher, so that your corresponding diet needs to also change. But for the single breath program, I will just give you some information about what are some types of things that you could do to help facilitate it if you want to make it more easy. So the reason why I couldn't do it is because after I did a breath practice, I felt nauseous. And the nauseous feeling is due to the toxicity in your body. And that when you breathe, it kind of circulates the garbage all along your body that makes you feel nauseous. Just like after a massage, when people are massaging you right between the muscles, they open things up. Then that's why they tell you to drink lots of water after you get a massage, so that you release all the toxins. Because otherwise, when you get up from a massage, you feel kind of dizzy and woozy. In one component, this dizziness is the extreme relaxation of it, but it's actually a big component is actually the level of garbage in your body that has been released that you need to flush out. So that's why you feel kind of woozy. So for people who feel woozy after the breath programs, which the first 10 of the single breath program, you should not feel. It's so gentle, you should not feel it. But in case you do, I may give you a little bit more assistance on what to do in terms of food and diet to like start purifying your body to be able to do those breath practices if that's your like main focus. Is that helpful for those 2 questions, like the age and conditions? Okay, great. Linda, go for it.
I was just doing a thumbs up because I agreed with what you were saying.
Oh, okay. But before she was talking, she said you wanted to go after her. Was there something that you wanted to say?
Oh, no. I was just, because I said you can talk after you unmute yourself.
Oh, got it. Okay. Awesome.
I'm all good. I'm over here learning.
All right. So yeah, if there's any other questions that you guys have about the single breath program, you're welcome to ask. We have about 7 minutes left. We're still good on time. But if there are no questions, then we'll end here.
Okay, you did make a comment about, so how many different levels or phases are there? Because
Levels
so you start
are
out with the single. So you said you start out with the single, and then you'll go to the next level. And what is that called? Or
so this is I'm getting nervous because this is so the plan is to create more levels of the single breath program. But here's the caveat. This is because the single breath program is the 2.0 version of our pure breath program. So the 12-week pure breath program is purely scientific information, pure science, 100% science. But the single breath program is the scientific, all of the scientific components that I taught in the 12-week pure breath program will all be transferred onto the single breath program. But the single breath program will have an additional 7 valleys and yogic chakra components. So the 7 valleys is a spiritual sacred text, and the yogic chakra system is about the energy of the body. So what I'm saying is that we may not even need a level 2, because level 1 of the spiritual, adding the spiritual components to it, we're drawing on divine assistance, that maybe some things in the body that only this with the scientific knowledge could not have done, with the spiritual insights, it will be leveled and balanced. But this is the component where we don't know yet. But I know from a personal aspect and from like yogic spiritual sacred practices, I know that the spiritual component of studying the 7 valleys with the breath practices, it's going to expedite things. And what we don't know for this breath program is how quickly it will expedite things in the body to be able to heal. I say that it's like so quick that we might not even need the second level, because the 7 valleys is almost like the magnet to just, and then the breath is the way to go there. So it's like both really, really quick practices for like the fastest progress, lightning speed progress to happen. But this is what we don't know about the single breath program. So this is why it's so exciting in one sense, in that I'm very looking forward to seeing what the difference is of adding the single breath program component of the 7 valleys will do to the speed of progress within the physical body, the mind, and the soul, with all of the other things. Because breath is quick to begin with, but then adding the component of the spiritual aspects, woo, that's like I'm putting you on a highway. So it's very quick, and I just don't know how quick. This is where the measurements of like making sure that each one of your breath practices are measured is so important, is so that we see how long it takes for people to start changing and what actually happens in people's bodies as they change, you know? So it's like maybe the notice your breath practice on its own is super powerful, but then the notice your breath practice when you're focusing on a theme of the 7 valleys might be like, it's not going to be the same. But just how different it's going to be, we don't know this. So this is the exciting part that we're really looking forward to studying this entire year, is actually to see how to kind of expedite the process, but then also measure what are the realities of what that actually means in the physical body and things like that. And so when we do later scientific research on it, I will be like measuring your blood of how it changes, like your inflammation markers and like your hormone levels and all the things, like what are the physiological changes, and then also how your brain changes as well, like how the neurons like start to map differently and all these things. So it's like, it's very exciting in that sense, but right now we're just trying to see what's going to happen with the new aspects of the 7 valleys, adding it into the program, which I anticipate. I'm like holding kind of like my breath whilst I say this, because I feel like I have I'm just very excited. I'm just very excited to see what's going to happen. And I have predictions of what it's going to be good for. But the Pure Breath program itself exceeded my expectations. Like, I really just wanted to make people calm, make them stress-free, that when they make decisions that they're in their sympathetic nervous system and that they can think of creative solutions, because otherwise you cannot think of creative solutions. So I was thinking more along these lines, but then people were reporting happiness. People were reporting joy. And I'm like, I didn't really want you guys to be happy. I mean, that wasn't like my goal, but like, so great that you are, right? So meaning, like, when I think of the 7 valleys, I'm thinking of certain things, and all of those certain things, we definitely achieved it in the Pure Breath program. But for the 7 valleys, I'm like even nervous to say what could be potentially achieved from that, because it's so much. But then even after that, so much of my own predictions, I know that there's going to be new things there that I can't predict that are beneficial. I can't imagine there being negatives to it, as long as we keep in terms of like exactly that, like we're making sure the mental health of people are stable and things like that. And so that's like really the most important thing. Otherwise, it's all great, like all positive like results in that sense. So yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
If there is no question, I have one quick question.
Go for it.
I don't know the name of this one, but those people in the sleeping time, they hold their breath.
Yes.
And
so people who have
it helped?
Yes. So this is actually the topic of my research. This is the topic of my PhD research, is to see whether or not the
sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea, yes, sleep apnea. But my research study is actually to see whether or not the daytime breath practices that I teach you will actually affect your sleep time breathing. So I'm trying to see whether it's subconsciously will do that. That's something that science doesn't know yet. My prediction is that it will. Sleep apnea is a little different in that sense, but because actually for when I was designing the research study, I had to exclude people who had sleep apnea. So there's many reasons why people will have sleep apnea. It might be structural, their nasal cavities are not so large, or like, you know, when they sit back, they kind of like compress. If they're obese, they kind of compress their throat and just block the airways. So it's more like structural. So even if I teach you the subconscious things, it might not help the structural obstructions that you have. So that's why we had to exclude it. But I do think the awareness, like there's no way after doing the breath program so many times in a day that it will not embed in your brain, in your subconscious brain, which is in your sleep, that it will affect it. Like, I know that will bleed through. We just don't know how it will bleed through. So that's actually what the research I'm actually doing on is to see how the breath practices will affect people's sleep time breathing. Because this is the thing. Remember, I was talking about the core of things. The core of things are breath. The second core of that is sleep. So this is the second closest to the core. is your sleep. So that's why the breath program is actually testing the sleep, what its effect on sleep is. And the third on top of the sleep is nutrition. So it's the breath that is the core, the sleep that's the most important, and especially your breath during sleep. And then your rest that depends on your nutrition and the way you breathe during your eat. So like these are like kind of like if we were to like do it like a Russian doll, the babyest is the breath. Then on top of that, one layer more is like how does breath affect sleep? And then one more doll upon that is how does the breath and the sleep affect nutrition? But the breath is always the core. So actually one of the second week's lecture, I'll be talking about how to notice your breath in your daily activities like sleep, eating, and exercising. So I'll be actually talking about how the breath should be in these three circumstances. And this is even before we're starting to like learn the more deeper aspects of the single breath, so that you have a longer period of time to notice what in your life, like when you eat, how do you breathe? And then when you sleep, how do you breathe? When you exercise, how do you breathe? For you to be aware of it, even though that's not the major component of the single breath program, I still do want you to know all of the benefits of it. And when we do the debrief sessions, you can ask me any questions of your breath during these activities that you have, that if we didn't cover it in the single breath program lectures, the debrief sessions are going to be the time where you can ask me more questions about it. Yes, go ahead.
And when you're stressed or frightened
Yes.
or upset,
Yes.
what is your breath doing in that moment? A lot of times people don't breathe, or they breathe very shallowly.
Yes.
Which means that you don't get that oxygen to the brain and the rest of the body.
That's why I teach you 10 techniques in the single breath program, so that, and I really etch it in your brain. Yeah, I'm like doing 1-0 here. It's like really, it's like 10. Yeah, it's true. It's 10. I'm teaching you 10 breath practices, and I'm really etching each one of them in your brain, in your neural pathways, in your habits specifically. This is actually, I love that you asked this question, because this is where other breath programs do not understand that when you're in a fright, flight, emotional SOS situation, you're not connected to your brain. You don't have access to that part of your brain. But if it's really like a habit that you've built, you do have access to it. It is closer to your brain to be able to like access a tool when you know it. And especially if you're taking a 12-week breath program, think about it. It takes 19 days to build a habit. 12 weeks are like 3 times those 19 days, and actually 3.5 times of those 19 days. So you really get this habit. This is why it's so important for you to do the practices daily. It means nothing. The whole program means nothing if you don't do the practices. This is not a practice. This is not a program to just learn and for information's sake. This is actually a doing program. It's not a being program, or this is not a knowledge program. This is a practice program. And it's a habit practice program specifically. So yes, with your question of like, what do people do in the stress state, in the emotional state, and all these things, that's also the second week's lecture, where I talk more about when you're in love, what happens to your breath, when you're scared, what happens to your breath, when you have a disease, what happens to your breath. All of these things will be described throughout the program, but of course, in these situations of how to deal with it. This is why it's so important. I'm teaching you 10 breath practices in many different contexts that you can practice them. And I'm also, the last week entirely is dedicated to when to use these breath practices. So the entire lecture, it's a summary of the 10 breath practices and in which situations you should use it. So it's like we go really deep into, not only am I teaching you the breath practices, I'm also teaching you which breath practices to best be used in these circumstances. Like, not just any circumstance, all of the breath techniques are relevant, but you usually need just like 2 or 3. If I'm feeling like emotional, there's like 1, 2, or 3 that I need. And you can choose between the 3. And in that moment, you decide, all right, I like this one the most. And it's usually really, especially when it comes to emotions, the simpler, the better, because you don't really have, you're stressed out. You really don't have that much like brain power, and it needs to just be simple, because just be very simple. I think there's actually a YouTube video that I created where I go into depth in actually actually that's the next video I'm about to post. I share a video of what type of breath practices I use when. Actually, the video is about 5 ways I calm down the quickest using the 5 layers of the body. How do I physically change my state? How do I energetically change my state, mind and emotion? And how do I change my awareness? And then how do I change my like bliss, like my joy, like when I'm not like accessing it? So actually the next video on YouTube is exactly this. And I actually demonstrate, because a lot of the tools is breath practices that I do, 3 of which I think are breath practices, and I describe in which circumstances I use which one. So yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah.
I hope this video will be out.
Yes, I will. Actually, you froze, but I will be including this video on YouTube as well. So this is an information center. Hopefully everyone here is okay. Hopefully I have everyone's permission to post this on YouTube. Just so it can help other people to also kind of see like what it is, what they can expect with the single breath program, because I think this would be helpful. Cool. So we literally, it's 1:11 right now. This is the perfect time to end. And I will see you guys here. For the members, I will see you guys next week. And thank you guys for joining the info session for the single breath program. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.